All right, okay.
That works.
So thank you very much. So thank you all for coming here. Let me start by saying that. I want to make sure everyone. My name is Scott Gessler. I'm the Colorado Secretary of State. And so just to sort of tell you what's going on and how I'm viewing this, I'm out here as part of a statewide election integrity listening tour. And the reason why I think it's very important is, sometimes my office will hold hearings in Denver. And, sometimes it's the usual suspects who show up. And they give us a lot of great information. But the fact of the matter is that it helps me even more rather than listening to talking points, and I know the controversies and the different viewpoints people have. But what helps me most, I think, is listening to people who experienced the election, whether they participated as a canvass board member or a judge or a watcher or a political participant or anything, for people to say, hey, this is my experience, this is what I saw, or this is what I specifically heard, and this is what either worked well or what can go better. And that's really what I'm sort of looking for, is for people's experiences and what you saw, what you heard, and what you think about this election. I'll start off by saying, I want to thank Clerk Sheila Ryder for having this, and I also see Clerk Fran Long from Montrose in the audience here as well. We're going down to Montrose a little bit later tomorrow. But I want to thank them for participating as well. Here's how I view our election. 2012, I think we had a really good election. And I think we can measure that across several variables, several instances. So first of all, we had good participation in our election. Now when I say we had a good election, I'm not talking about necessarily the outcome, but how it was administered. And so the administration of the election worked really well. So we had participation went up. To give you some sense, some statistics, for voter registration, we had 400,000 more people registered to vote this election than in 2008. And that's well above 10%. And I can tell you Colorado didn't grow 10% in those 4 years. So we had more registered voters than ever before. And we had more voters than ever before. That went up like 1.2, maybe almost 1.5% was the increase in our voter turnout. So you may say, well, that's just 1.2. You compare us to other states, it was a big drop-off. Nationally, it was a big drop-off. We're one of the few states that actually saw an increase in voter turnout and voter participation. And I think part of that was, my office, we were very aggressive in encouraging people to register to vote. I didn't encourage people to vote. I wanted to stay away from that. But encouraging people to register to vote. And we created new tools. We have sort of an online voter registration system now. So in order to use that, in order to register for the first time, you have to have a driver's license or a state ID. But if you have that, and over 99% of our voters do have that, it's easy to register to vote. And on our online voter registration system, we had, in the 45 days before the close of registration, we had over 80,000 people register to vote online. And we would send that information to the clerks and recorders, and then they would specifically register people. So that was really sort of a good success story. The other thing is, you look at participation, but you also look at integrity and making sure that our voter rolls are accurate. There's less chance for mistake and fraud and things like that. And I think we did a much better job than in the past in Colorado as well. So the advertising campaign we did, part of it was encouraging people to register to vote. But part of it was encouraging people to update their own information, because we know there's lots of inaccuracies in our voter rolls. One national study that came out about a year ago said 1 out of every 8 voter registrations nationwide was inaccurate. So one of the things we did is we encouraged people through the online system to update their own voter registration information. And prior to this election, we had, in the 2 months or so, about 250,000 people updated their voter registration information. And so if you do the math, I'm not sure all those people voted, but what I can say is, that's roughly about 1 in 10 voters updated their own information online, and we have very accurate voter rolls. I've been forward-leaning, some would say, in making sure we only have citizens who are registered and who actually vote, because that is one of the requirements of Colorado state law. And I've been an advocate of that, and we've actually seen some real results. We've seen a lot of people coming to clerks and recorders' offices or even my office asking to be removed because they didn't know they weren't supposed to be registered as a non-citizen. And I think that what that has taught us is there's a lot of people who don't know the rules, okay, and are doing things by mistake, and so we've got to do a better job of preventing those mistakes up front and giving people an opportunity to do the right thing on the back end too as well. And then also, as far as quality of the election, this year I think we saw far fewer complaints and far fewer concerns out in the field. When I say out in the field, beyond my office, out among clerks and reporters, than we've seen in the past. Fewer complaints, fewer concerns. And I've been involved in elections, either in the private or Secretary of State for about a dozen years now, and far fewer problems than we've seen in the past. And of course, the political parties would get all ramped up, but the things they're getting ramped up about are far smaller issues than they used to be in the past. We're doing a better job. And certainly, when you look at the TV coverage and whatnot, we saw these really long lines and big problems in Florida or Ohio. Obviously, Colorado was a battleground state. Lots of eyes on us, and we performed really well. So, the way we can sort of pat ourselves on the back is saying we had a really good election. Better than in the past, better than other states. However, the way I look at things is that doesn't mean we have a perfect election by any stretch. There are still creative things that we can do to help people participate. I think there are still things that we can do to make sure our voter rolls are cleaner than they've been in the past and more accurate. So for example, there's 10 counties, I know, in the state here, not this county, not Montrose, that have more registered voters than there are voting age population based on the census. And we've talked to those clerks, and they're doing things right. They're following state law, they're following procedures. And what that means is we have to do a more thorough analysis, whether it's looking at maybe statewide procedures that have problems, or whether there's laws that need to be changed or modified, whatever we can do to fix that. One of the things we're looking at is we're comparing our data against other states' data to find people who, for example, have moved out of Colorado and no longer live here, but are still in the voter rolls, so we can update it that way as well. So that's sort of one example of how we can do things better. Clerk Reiner sort of mentioned the uniform voting system. One of the challenges we have here in the state of Colorado is, lots of different counties use different systems, and that creates a lot more complexity. It reduces our collective purchasing power in the marketplace. And so what we're doing is we're moving more towards a uniform voting system where we standardize across components so we can do better, better quality in a lot of areas where different counties can help one another out when there's a problem. Right now, a lot of times, we'll have neighboring counties that use completely different types of equipment, and so they have trouble helping one another when they need to. So it reduces our flexibility to respond to issues. It reduces our purchasing power. And so we've been spending a lot of time working on that. What we're going to see over the next year is, we're going to be developing standards for this uniform voting system. So we have a lot of stakeholders. It's a big project to find something that's going to work here in the state of Colorado on a detailed basis. But I think that's going to help us see improvements, and it's also going to help, I think, reduce our costs as a state. Not just our acquisition costs, but our life cycle costs when it comes to equipment. And those costs, for the most part, are really borne by the counties, the taxpayers of the counties. So we really want to work at saving money there too. So, bottom line is this. I think we had a good election, really good election. I think there's still a lot of work for us to do to make it better in the future. And my goal is to make 2014 better than it was in 2012. In my experience,